Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Greer and it's lovely to have you here with me today. I really wanted to incorporate my love for music into a video, so today we're going to be talking about playlists and tips for making playlists. I thought it would be fitting to wear this shirt that I got from the Soul Sugar Joint. Hopefully you can see it there. Isn't that gorgeous? The Soul Sugar Joint is a music community for lovers of modern and classic R&B, funk, and soul. Special shout out to Brooks who runs that community. She is also a fantastic DJ. I really enjoy her live sessions on TikTok. So I highly recommend you checking out the Soul Sugar Joint. I will leave links in the description. To me, making playlists is an art form that really allows you to add a personal touch to your music collection. It can help you organize your music, it can help you rediscover songs that you may have forgotten about. If you're anything like me, you listen to so much music that you really have to be intentional about getting those older songs back into rotation. I think it's also a great way for you to experience the music that you listen to in a whole new context that you get to create. So let's go over some of the tips that I find useful when I'm making playlists. Since Spotify is my music streaming application of choice, that's the app that you're going to see me using and talking about. But of course, if you use Apple Music or Tidal or another music streaming service, that's fine as well. The first thing you're going to want to do is think about the inspiration behind your playlist. What is it that you wanted to accomplish? What is the purpose of this playlist and how do you want it to feel? I used to just put songs together based on what sounded similar, and that's one way to do it, and it can actually be a good starting point. For example, I have a playlist that's specifically for my 90s R&B, so Brandy, Toni Braxton, Aaliyah. I also have one called Soca Things that's specifically for my soca, and then I have a companion to this one called Dancehall Things for my dancehall music. But then you might find that you want to branch off from that and actually start to do some real curation and get creative with how you put songs together. I think this is where the challenge is, but it's also where the fun comes in because now you're crafting something that is based on your creative perspective. Maybe you want to cross genres and test out how different soundscapes come together. Maybe you want to create dialogue between artists. So let's talk about some of the ways that you might draw inspiration. I tend to associate certain songs with different time periods in my life, different people and places. I think playlists can help to capture those moments and take you back to them and create a lot of nostalgia. So for example, this is my Saturday Night in GT playlist. As I mentioned before, I'm from Guyana, born and raised in Georgetown, which is the capital, and it's affectionately known as GT. This playlist reminds me of driving around on a Saturday night and you'd hear this kind of music coming from corner shops or people's houses, maybe an old school party. You can also use a playlist to tell a story, whether that's a story about something you've experienced, maybe somebody that you used to know. I have this playlist called Always Evolving, which we're actually going to be talking about in another point, but this one I think is the story of me and the different mind states that I tend to inhabit from time to time. You can also use a playlist to explore a specific subject or topic. This playlist, A Dedication, came to me after I started thinking about all the songs that artists have dedicated to specific people in their lives. Or maybe you want to evoke a certain feeling or emotion. Playlists can change your mood, and a well-curated playlist can take you through a range of emotions, whether positive or negative. I have this one called Please Take Me With You, and this captures, I think, what it feels like to long for somebody, to be ships passing in the night, or to have someone be the one that got away. And so whenever I'm in any of my melancholy moods, this is all I will want to listen to. I also realize that sometimes it does not need to be that deep. Maybe you just want something to dance to, or maybe you're making a playlist for an event, maybe it's a party. I think brainstorming the why of your playlist is a great place to start. So once you've thought of your why and your inspiration behind the playlist, I think it can be very tempting to get carried away and just add hundreds of songs to the list. But when you create a limit for yourself, I think that's a challenge for you to really dig deep and find those songs that are especially meaningful, the ones that stand out. That way, each song gets to shine and it's not being drowned out by the hundreds of others that are in there. And I find that those also tend to be the more memorable ones. When you think about a music album, for example, the average length is usually 9 to 12 tracks, and of course there are outliers, but I think between 9 and 12 is a good place to start for playlists as well. It's important to ask yourself how tracks sound in a certain order because that can completely change the feel of the playlist. I don't think that this is important for all playlists. Of course, sometimes you just want to be able to put the playlist on shuffle and you're good to go. But I think it's especially important for those where you're trying to tell a story and you want there to be some kind of cohesion and you want the listener to see that there was some intentional thought behind how the tracks are ordered. I think that cohesion can be created sonically with things like beat matching tempos and well-placed transitions. Since I'm not a professional musician or a professional music curator, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on either of those. But what I will say is that you know how certain traits of a song make you feel, whether it's an energetic rapper over a tight drum beat or airy vocals against a slow violin melody. What I'll try to do now is use one of my own playlists that I mentioned before, Always Evolving, to try to illustrate how you can order your songs to tell a story using both lyrics and instrumentation. So this playlist starts off with Vanishing by Anais. On this track, the artist is coming to terms with all the dark parts of herself and trying not to let those engulf her. There is this very haunting piano chord progression throughout the song and her voice just has a very earnest quality to it. Then we go to Ribs by Lorde, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's about the highs and lows of growing up, experiencing change and wishing that you could go back sometimes. The instruments and vocals build up in the chorus and verses until the bridge where there's this very climactic moment that feels almost cathartic, like you're finally allowing yourself to express all the things that you're feeling. The next track is Barely There by Gia Margaret, and this one has sort of an ambient nature to it. Gia isn't singing on this track, she's actually speaking, and she's speaking over the instruments, and at times it feels like there's this push and pull and she's almost fighting the instruments, and that builds some tension. I think on this track she has managed to put to words a feeling that I often experience, which is that I'm existing outside of myself. At the beginning, she asks, do you ever feel like you're living your life, but you're also barely there? And then it ends with a very reassuring, you're there. So while those first 3 tracks are a little more intense, a little more existential, and represent me being in that darker, more negative space, the next few illustrate me trying to come out of that. So we have Wings by Flores, and I think this was probably meant to be a breakup song just based on the lyrics, but it works well here because she talks about soul searching and being okay with letting go and moving on. I would consider this R&B, but there's also an element of gospel to it, and she has such a mesmerizing voice. After that, we have Pip Millet's Heal. This one is one of my favorite tracks by Pip. She's very vulnerable on this track. It feels like a warm hug. It's about realizing that you have to work on yourself. And then the final 2 tracks, we have Gold by Mereba. This one is about overcoming adversity. It's a little lighter and more upbeat than the previous songs, but it still has that contemplative quality to it that encourages you to reflect. And then we end with Good Days by SZA. This song just feels like a safe space to land. Whenever I hear that signature guitar riff, you probably know which one I'm talking about. I feel like I'm being transported. This song feels like it's saying, okay, you've figured out that you have things to deal with, you're moving through it, and now it's just time to enjoy all the good things that you have in your life. Now remember that playlists can be very personal, so you want to try to make them as specific to you as you can. You can think of a cool title, you can add custom cover art. There are so many different ways that you can be creative with this. I have this one called In the Ether. If we think about the definition of the word ethereal, it means light and delicate. And all of the artists in this playlist have voices with this very light and angelic quality where it feels like you're almost floating on them. And then a lot of the images that I use as the covers for my playlist, I either find through Pinterest or Google, or they're photos that I took myself. So you can see for my R and Back Then playlist, I have this photo of Rihanna as the cover. She's looking a little pensive, like she's thinking about something, but I think this one works well for a couple of reasons. The first is that this is how I feel when I think about R&B from 2008 and 2009. There was just something different about that era. Rihanna was one of the artists that I listened to a lot during that time. I also have this one called teen.mp3, and you can see I've just used a photo of an iPod, and this reminds me of those days where we used to get our music from questionable sources and then just load all of it onto our MP3 players and our iPods. Now, more than likely, you're creating this playlist to be listened to, whether you're doing the listening or someone else is doing the listening, and you might find that it doesn't come out exactly the way you'd like it to after the first try, or it doesn't feel the way you want it to, and that's fine because this is yours and you get the chance to edit it, maybe rearrange songs and change things around depending on the kind of feel you're going for. Another idea could be to iterate on your playlist or have different versions of a playlist. So for example, I have two playlists called Lady Lines, all strictly women artists. The first one can be considered more your contemporary R&B, neo soul ladies, Jill Scott, your Erykah Badu, India Arie, Lauryn Hill. The second one is a different generation of women, what I would consider your more modern R&B that is maybe a little more provocative. Summer Walker, Janae Aiko, Ari Lennox, Kehlani. Music is a love language, and I think one of the most beautiful things someone can do for you, or vice versa, is put together some of your favorite songs that remind you of them, songs that maybe were the background to an experience you shared. So I'd encourage you to share your playlists with family, friends, anyone who will care to listen. And I think that's a great way to get feedback because people are going to experience music differently. On the flip side of that, I think sometimes there are playlists that are just so personal to you that you treasure and that you want to hold close and that you may not necessarily want to share with other people, and that is fine too, whatever makes you happy. So those are all the tips that I have for you for today. If you enjoyed today's video and you found any of those tips helpful, remember to leave a like and subscribe. Comment to let me know if you have any tips of your own and if there are any songs that you would recommend given what you've seen of my music taste today. I am always looking for new music recommendations. Take good care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.